Scene 3 shifts the anthology away from the older-younger dynamics of its previous stories and toward a more revealing encounter between two peers, Adriana and Scarlet, whose conversation after a successful game gradually becomes a discussion about ambition, family expectations, lesbian identity, and the difficulty of admitting desires that do not fit the identities people have already assigned themselves. The scene begins casually, with the women celebrating their win and entering Adriana's home. Scarlet admires the house, asks about its rooms, and learns that one bedroom remains available in case Adriana's sister returns. That seemingly ordinary detail establishes a domestic environment shaped by family, obligation, and the possibility of someone coming back. Adriana offers food or something to drink, and Scarlet admits that despite Adriana having lived there for nearly 2 years, they have barely crossed paths outside their shared activities. Adriana explains why. Her parents enforce an 11 o'clock weekend curfew, require weekday study sessions, and expect her to help at their print shop. Her schedule leaves remarkably little space for unstructured social life. Scarlet is surprised by the restrictions, while Adriana describes them almost apologetically, suggesting that she has become accustomed to explaining limitations that other young women around her may not share. This opening matters because the later conversation about attraction does not emerge from nowhere. Adriana is presented as someone whose life has been organized around achievement, responsibility, and parental supervision. She has learned how to meet expectations, but she has had fewer opportunities to ask what she wants when nobody else is defining the answer. That conflict becomes clearer when Scarlet brings up Adriana's unsuccessful application to the academy. Adriana has a 4 gigapascals and knows students with lower grades who were accepted, leaving her confused and disappointed. Scarlet explains that admission depends partly upon social standing and money, acknowledging that her own mother's position as district attorney helped her. The admission punctures the comforting idea that achievement alone determines opportunity. Adriana has followed the rules perfectly and still finds herself outside an institution she wants to enter. For women generally, this frustration can resonate with the experience of being told that diligence, politeness, and excellence guarantee recognition, only to discover networks of privilege operating behind supposedly objective systems. For queer women specifically, the conversation soon adds another layer. Scarlet jokingly suggests that Adriana should have identified herself as a lesbian on her application. Adriana immediately responds that she is not one. The moment is humorous on the surface, but it also establishes the central question of the scene. How certain is Adriana about an identity she may never have been given space to examine? Scarlet presses the subject by asking whether Adriana has ever been curious about other cheerleaders. Adriana says no, explaining that in shared changing spaces she simply focuses on getting dressed. Scarlet points out that their teammates are attractive, and Adriana comfortably agrees that they are pretty while resisting the implication that acknowledging another woman's beauty must automatically define her sexuality. That distinction is important. Women are often allowed to praise one another aesthetically because feminine admiration is culturally normalized. Yet the boundary between admiration and attraction can become confusing for queer women precisely because society provides so many non-romantic explanations for intense attention between women. A woman can call another woman beautiful, become emotionally attached to her, think about her constantly, or seek unusual closeness while still interpreting those feelings through the safer vocabulary of friendship. Scarlet's questions begin unsettling that protective ambiguity. She asks whether Adriana has imagined kissing another woman, and Adriana again says no. Yet her answers become less absolute as the conversation continues. When Scarlet suggests that she think about it because such feelings can be enjoyable rather than frightening, Adriana does not leave or shut down the conversation. Instead, she agrees to keep talking. This transition from denial to curiosity is one of the scene's most meaningful movements because it avoids treating identity as a switch suddenly flipped by another person. Adriana does not instantly announce a new label. She becomes willing to examine possibilities. Scarlet proposes that they discuss fantasies, offering to reveal something personal first so Adriana will not be solely exposed. They move into Adriana's bedroom, a more private space that symbolically moves the conversation from public identity toward interior life. Scarlet jokes that the sparse room makes Adriana's parents seem as though they keep her locked away, and Adriana agrees. The bedroom therefore becomes an extension of Adriana's character, controlled, protected, and relatively untouched by experimentation. When Adriana asks Scarlet to speak first, she is effectively asking for a model of disclosure. Scarlet responds with a provocative fantasy involving teammates and control, but an emotionally responsible reading should separate fantasy from ethical behavior. Imagination can contain exaggerated scenarios that would require explicit mutual agreement in reality. The significant narrative function is that Scarlet admits to desires she does not normally discuss publicly. She demonstrates that private thoughts do not automatically make someone shameful, and that talking about them can create intimacy when boundaries remain respected. Adriana then offers a revelation that complicates everything she previously said about never considering women romantically. She recalls being attracted to a friend's mother and describes a past evening when, after drinking wine, they kissed. Adriana says she wanted greater closeness, but when she sensed the woman was not interested in continuing, she stopped. This is one of the most ethically significant details in the scene. Her memory is not merely evidence that she has experienced attraction toward a woman. It also shows her recognizing another person's boundary and allowing that boundary to determine what happened next. Her earlier claim that she is not a lesbian can therefore be understood less as dishonesty than as evidence of how complicated labels can become when experience and self-concept do not align neatly. She has felt something for a woman, remembers it vividly, and admits that she imagined what greater emotional closeness might have been like, yet she has not incorporated that experience into a stable queer identity. Many lesbian and bisexual women may recognize some version of this gap between experience and language. People often reinterpret earlier memories, only after gaining a vocabulary that makes those memories legible. A childhood fixation, an unusually intense friendship, admiration for an older woman, jealousy that seemed inexplicable, or a moment of unexpected tenderness may initially be filed under categories that feel socially safer. Years later, those memories can acquire different meanings. Adriana is experiencing that interpretive process in real time. Scarlet does not merely hear the story, she recognizes its implications and responds without ridicule. Their conversation then expands into family. Scarlet reveals that she has two mothers, casually placing a lesbian family structure inside the scene without treating it as extraordinary. This detail quietly challenges the idea that relationships between women exist only as experimentation. Scarlet comes from a household in which two women constitute family, permanence, and everyday life. The distinction matters because popular culture has historically oscillated between erasing lesbian relationships and depicting them primarily through novelty. Two mothers introduce another possibility, queer love as ordinary domestic continuity. Scarlet nevertheless talks playfully about appearance, and the women compare their mothers and family resemblance. Beneath the joking is a deeper question about how women understand themselves through other women. Mothers can represent inherited femininity, expectations, fears, and possible futures. Friends and teammates can represent alternative ways of being. Queer communities can add chosen family, allowing women to encounter identities absent from their homes. Scarlet occupies several of these symbolic positions simultaneously. She is Adriana's peer and teammate, but she also possesses cultural knowledge Adriana lacks. Her two-mother household means lesbian relationships are already integrated into her understanding of ordinary life. Adriana, by contrast, approaches same-gender attraction as something she has experienced without fully naming. Their friendship, therefore, becomes a bridge between lived feeling and available language. Eventually, Scarlet asks a question toward which their conversation has been moving. What would Adriana think if Scarlet kissed her? Adriana answers, "I don't know." That uncertainty should not be rewritten as secret certainty. One of the most important principles for interpreting this scene responsibly is allowing hesitation to remain meaningful. Scarlet asks her to close her eyes, Adriana agrees, and their tentative closeness begins. Immediately afterwards, Scarlet asks whether it is okay. Adriana answers maybe, which keeps the emotional situation unresolved. Scarlet encourages her not to be nervous, while Adriana openly admits that she is. The scene's strongest material comes from this negotiation because it depicts self-discovery as awkward rather than magically effortless. Adriana is simultaneously curious and cautious. She does not possess a polished speech explaining her identity because she is still discovering what the experience means. Scarlet becomes more confident in interpreting Adriana's responses, telling her that she seems to like the closeness and pointing out that Adriana is reciprocating. Yet a critical analysis should be careful here. Another person cannot determine someone's orientation or consent merely from perceived responsiveness. Adriana's spoken uncertainty matters. When she later says that she likes the connection, that statement belongs to her and therefore carries greater significance than Scarlet's earlier assumptions. The distinction is essential for queer representation. Lesbian visibility should never depend upon treating hesitation as meaningless. Women loving women becomes more ethically and emotionally compelling when both women are permitted to articulate what they want, slow down, reconsider, and establish boundaries without having those boundaries interpreted as obstacles. Adriana eventually does exactly that by saying they need to go slowly. This becomes the emotional center of the encounter. Going slowly is not rejection. It is a request for the experience to unfold at a pace she can understand. Scarlet responds, and when confusion briefly arises about whether Adriana wants to continue, the dialogue explicitly returns to the question of what Adriana wants. She answers affirmatively, but only after the pause has created room for her decision. For queer viewers, this sequence can resonate with the vulnerability of first experiences that carry implications beyond the moment itself. Adriana is not simply discovering whether she enjoys closeness with Scarlet. She may also be reconsidering assumptions about herself, her past, and the future she imagined. The earlier conversation about the academy becomes especially important in this context. At first, lesbian identity is jokingly presented as something she could write on an application to improve her chances. By the end of the scene, however, queerness has become something far more personal than an institutional category. It cannot be reduced to a diversity box or strategic identity. Adriana must decide what, if any, label describes her, and no admissions committee, teammate, parent, or romantic interest can make that determination for her. The contrast exposes a broader cultural contradiction. Institutions increasingly possess official language for LGBTQ+ identities, yet individuals may still struggle privately with what those words mean in their own lives. Visibility at the bureaucratic level does not automatically eliminate uncertainty, shame, family pressure, or fear. Adriana's strict upbringing intensifies that tension. She has excelled academically, helped her parents, obeyed curfews, and structured her life around responsibility. Her attraction to women therefore enters a personality already trained to prioritize rules. Many women, regardless of orientation, can recognize this dynamic. Girls are often praised for being manageable, conscientious, agreeable, and safe. They learn to anticipate other people's needs before identifying their own. Such conditioning can make romantic vulnerability difficult because desire requires admitting that one wants something without knowing whether that desire will be approved. For queer women, the problem can be amplified because the desired relationship may itself challenge assumptions inherited from family or culture. Adriana's nervousness consequently becomes more than simple romantic shyness. It reflects the difficulty of moving from a life organized by external standards toward one guided partly by internal truth. Scarlet, meanwhile, represents a contrasting mode of womanhood. Ultimately, her uncertainty matters because authentic queer visibility begins with permission to question, choose, slow down, speak clearly, and define oneself without coercion alone.